of Michael Live, bringing stories to life through live voice presentations, um, and supporting what becomes a unique experience in Second Life, which is sharing literature in a way that is feels both personal and is also communal. Um, all sessions here at Shawnee Library are offered freely. There is never, ever, 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 not even then, any obligation to tip. If you choose to show your appreciation for what Drax is sharing today and for what we've been doing for a whole mess of years, you are welcome to join us in support of our current featured charity, which is Reach Out and Read. Reach Out and Read is an early literacy initiative here in the United States. It works through pediatric wellness exams, doctors and nurses, helping young families get introduced to literature as if it was part of their wellness, which I think Drax and I would both make an argument that it is. You can learn more about them at reachoutandread.org or by clicking on the Shamrock panel behind me on the wall. And you can find, hello, Marion, the B-striped jar on the shelf next to it is our tip jar. But as I said, this is offered freely. There's no obligation, but you're welcome to join us in support of Reach Out and Read if you wish. If you are new to Shawnee Library, welcome. There's a whole mess of information on the back wall. Dex. I haven't seen Dex in a while. And you're totally more than welcome. There are subscribers. We have a website, www.shawneelibrary.com. We're almost at the end, the last week and a half of our summer stories series, and that is visible on the calendar marquee. We do have a few rules, but they're pretty easy rules. One is no recording. I believe that Drax is streaming, but we do ask that you not capture the audio. You can take pictures, take all pictures you want, not capture the audio of the presentation, as we don't have the author's permission to do this, and we respect the right of content creators. So we want you to go out and buy the book. That's what we tend to do. If you want to learn more about Infinite Jest, click on the book behind Drax. And please keep your microphone off and muted during the reading for the comfort of your fellow guests, and so Drax can give us the best possible reading. And with that, I'm turning off my mic, and away we go, Drax. Thank you for joining us today. I'm glad we could finally find a way to do this.
Thank you, Caledonia, for this introduction. And, I'll be reading 3 excerpts from this massive book that has, including the footnotes, over 1,000 pages in the original English. And there is complexity in this book. There is a plot. There is hilarity. There is a lot of dysfunctional families, suicide, drug addiction, but it is very, very, very funny, and the author was able to put so much empathy into this book. He cares about each and every character. I just wanted to set it up like that because when people hear suicide and drug addiction, they don't want to engage with a story like that. But I encourage you to engage with it. And without any further ado, I'm not going to go into plots. I'm going to read 3 excerpts. The first one is actually the original opening. The book came out in 1996, but this opening was published before, sort of as a teaser. In the book, it is not the opening, but my friend Tim Eastwood told me this was the original opening. I had no idea. One last note, the book, as was written in 1996, plays in the future, so there's a sci-fi aspect to it, and every year is sponsored. So the year is not 2005, 2006. This chapter is called Year of the Tux Medicated Pad. So each year can be purchased by a corporation and sponsored. So I will read to you excerpt number 1. April 1st, year of the Tux medicated pad. Well, all I know is my dad said to come here. Come right in. You'll see a chair to your immediate left. So, I am here. That's just fine. 7-Up, maybe some lemon soda? I guess not. Thanks. I'm just here is all, and I'm kind of wondering why my dad sent me down. Your door there doesn't have anything on it, and I was just at the dentist last week, and so I'm wondering why I'm here exactly is all. That's why I'm not sitting down yet. You're how old, Hal? 14? I'll be 11 in June. Are you a dentist? Is this like a dental consult? You're here to converse. Converse? Yes. Pardon me while I key in this age correction. Your father had listed you as 14 for some reason. Converse as in with you? You're here to converse with me, Hal. Yes. I'm almost going to have to implore you to have a lemon soda. Your mouth is making those dry, sticky, inadequate saliva sounds. Well, Dr. Cigarelli says that's one reason for all the caries. It's that I have low salivary output. Those dry, sticky, salivaless sounds, which can be death to a good conversation. But I rode my bike all the way up here against the wind just to converse with you. Is the conversation supposed to start with me asking why? I'll begin by asking if you know the meaning of implore, Hal. Probably I'll go ahead and take a 7-Up then if you're going to implore. I'll ask you again whether you know implore, young sir. Young sir? You're wearing a bow tie, after all. Isn't that rather an invitation to young sir? Implore is a regular verb. Transitive, to call upon, or for in supplication, to pray to, or for earnestly to beseech, to entreat. Weak synonym urge, strong synonym beg. Etymology unmixed from Latin implorare, in meaning implorare, meaning in this context to cry aloud. OED condensed volume 6, page 1387, column 12, and a little bit of 13. Good Lord. She didn't exaggerate, did she? I tend to get beat up sometimes at the academy for stuff like that. Does this bear on why I'm here? That I'm a continentally ranked junior tennis player who can also recite great chunks of the dictionary verbatim at will and tends to get beat up and wears a bow tie? Are you like a specialist for gifted kids? Does this mean they think I'm gifted? Here you are. Drink up. Thanks. Ooh. Oh, you were thirsty. So then, if I sit down, you'll fill me in? A professional conversationalist knows his mucous membranes, after all. I might have to burp a little bit in a second from the soda. I'm alerting you ahead of time. Hal, you are here because I'm a professional conversationalist, and your father has made an appointment with me for you to converse. Excuse me. Tap, tap, tap. You're a professional conversationalist? I am. Yes. As I believe I just stated, I am a professional conversationalist. Don't start looking at your watch as if I'm taking up valuable time of yours. If himself made the appointment and paid for it, the time's supposed to be mine, right? Not yours. And then, but what's that supposed to mean? Professional conversationalist. A conversationalist is just one who converses much. You actually charge a fee to converse much. A conversationalist is also one who, I'm sure you'll recall, excels in conversation. Ah, that's Webster's 7th. That's not the OED. I am an OED man, doctor, if that's what you are. Are you a doctor? Do you have a doctorate? Most people like to put their diplomas up, I notice, if they have credentials, and Webster's 7th isn't even up to date. Webster's 8th amends to one who converses with much enthusiasm. Do you want another 7-Up? Is my father still having this hallucination I never speak? Is that why he put the moms up to having me bike up here? Himself. That's what I call my dad. We call him himself, as in, quote, the man himself, as it were. We call my mother the moms. My brother coined the term. I understand this isn't unusual. I understand most more or less normal families address each other internally by means of pet names and terms and monikers. Don't even think about asking me what my little internal moniker is. But himself, he hallucinates sometimes. Lately, you ought to be apprised. I'm wondering why the moms let him send me pedaling up here uphill against the wind when I've got a challenge match at 3 o'clock to converse with an enthusiast with a blank door and no diplomas anywhere in view. I, in my small way, would like to think it had as much to do with me as with you. That my reputation preceded me. Isn't that usually a pejorative clause? I'm wonderful fun to talk to. I'm a consummate professional. People leave my parlor in states. You are here. It's conversation time. Shall we discuss Byzantine erotica? How did you know I'm interested in Byzantine erotica? You seem persistently to confuse me with someone who merely hangs out a shingle with the word conversationalist on it, and this operation with a fly-by-night one strung together with chewing gum and twine. You think I have no support staff? Researchers at my beck? You think we don't delve full bore into the psyches of those for whom we've made appointments to converse? You don't think this fully accredited limited partnership would have an interest in obtaining data on what informs and stimulates our conversees? I know only one person who would ever use full bore in casual conversation. There's nothing casual about a professional conversationalist and staff. We delve, we obtain, and then some, young sir. Okay, Byzantine erotica. Alexandrian or Constantinian? You think we haven't thoroughly researched your own connection with the whole current intra-provincial crises in southern Quebec? What intra-provincial crisis in southern Quebec? I thought you wanted to talk racy mosaics. This is an upscale district of a vital North American metropolis, Hal. Standards here are upscale and high. A professional conversationalist, flat out, full bore, delves. Do you for one moment think that a professional plier of the trade of conversation would fail to probe beak deep into your family's sordid liaison with the pan-Canadian resistance notorious M. Duplessis and his malevolent but allegedly irresistible Menuses cum operative Luriah P? Listen, are you okay? Do you? I'm 10 for Pete's sake. I think maybe your appointment's calendar squares got juggled. I'm the potentially gifted 10-year-old tennis and lexical prodigy whose mom's a continental mover and shaker in the prescriptive grammar academic world, and whose dad's towering figure in optical and avant-garde film circles, and single-handedly founded the Enfield Tennis Academy, but drinks wild turkey at 5 a.m. and pitches over sideways during dawn drills on the court some days and some days presents with delusions about people's mouths moving but nothing coming out. I'm not even up to J yet in the condensed OED, much less Quebec or malevolent Lurias, and of the fact that photos of the aforementioned liaison being leaked to Der Spiegel resulted in the bizarre deaths of both an Ottawan paparazzo and a Bavarian international affairs editor, of an alpenstock through the abdomen and an ill-swallowed cocktail onion, respectively? What? I just finished Jew's Ear. I'm just starting on Jew's Harp and the general theory of oral liars. I've never even skied. That you could dare to imagine we'd fail conversationally to countenance certain weekly, shall we say, maternal assignations with a certain unnamed bisexual bassoonist in the Albertan Secret Guards Tactical Bands Unit? Gee, Is that the exit over there I see? That your blithe inattention to your own dear grammatical mother's cavortings with not one, not two, but over 30 Near Eastern medical attachés. Would it be rude to tell you that your mustache is askew? That her introduction of esoteric mnemonic steroids, stereochemically not dissimilar to your father's own daily hypodermic mega vitamin supplement derived from a certain organic testosterone regeneration compound distilled by the Jivaro shaman of the South Central LA basin into your innocent looking bowl of morning Ralston. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and tell you your whole face is kind of running, sort of. If you want to check, your nose is pointing at your lap. That your quote unquote complimentary Dunlop white body tennis rackets, super secret formulaic composition materials of high modulus graphite reinforced polycarbonate polybutylene resin are organochemically identical. I say again, identical to the gyroscopic balance sensor and mise-en-scene appropriation card and priapistic entertainment cartridge implanted in your very own towering father's anaplastic cerebrum after his cruel series of detoxifications and convolution smoothings and gastrectomy and prostatectomy and pancreatectomy and could possibly escape the combined investigative attention of it strikes me I've seen that Argyle sweater vest before. That's my dad's special Interdependence Day celebrity dinner Argyle sweater vest that he makes a point of never having cleaned. I know those stains. I was there for that clot of veal marsala right there. Is this whole appointment a date-connected thing? Is this April Fool's, Dad? Or do I need to call the moms? Who requires only daily evidence that you speak? That you recognize the occasional vista beyond your own generous mondragonoid nose's fleshy tip? Dad, you rented a whole office? You rented a whole face for this? But leave your old unmistakable sweater vest on? And how'd you even get down here before me? With the Mercury up on blocks after you? Did you fool CT into giving you the key to a functional car? Who used to pray daily for the day his own dear late father would sit, cough, open that bloody issue of the Tucson Citizen and not turn that newspaper into the room's fifth wall, and who after all this light and noise has apparently spawned the same silence? Who's lived this old ruddy, bloody, cruddy life in his five-walled rooms? Dad! Hello, Dad, I've got a duly scheduled challenge match in like 12 minutes. I've got this oral lyrologist who's going to be outside Brighton Best Savings wearing a pre-designated necktie at straight up 5. I have to mow his lawn for this interview. I can't just sit here watching you think I'm mute while you fake nose points at the floor. And are you hearing me talking, Dad? Are you hearing me? It speaks, hello. It accepts soda and defines implore. It converses with you. Praying for just one conversation, amateur or no, that does not end in terror, that does not end like all the others. You're staring at me, swallowing. Son? And that's excerpt number 1, where we get introduced to hell in Condensa as a little boy. So I threw you guys right into it. There's nothing when we start dissecting this, but I think you got the picture here. What's happening here? There's an issue with communication between father and son. Now I'm going to read another excerpt that is absolutely hilarious. Keep in mind that this was written in 1996, and there was no video telephony at the time. This is a very famous excerpt that's been quoted many times. When you Google David Foster Wallace Infinite Jest and how he predicted the future, this usually comes up. There's a lot of stuff that he predicted, and this is one of them, the anxiety around video telephony. And just also for context, the book is sort of interspersed with sort of technical explanations of things that go on for pages before the plot starts picking up again. So there's a lot of plot, there's a lot of action, but then there's these explanations of technology, which are hilarious. So here we go. Oh yeah, one more thing. There's a term called teleputer. The term teleputer is basically a computer that is connected to the internet. Here we go. Why, though in the early days of interlaces interneted teleputers that operated off largely the same fiber digital grid as the phone companies, the advent of video telephoning, aka videophony, enjoyed an interval of huge consumer popularity. Callers thrilled at the idea of phone interfacing both orally and facially, the little first generation phone video cameras being too crude and narrow apertured for anything much more than facial close-ups. On first generation teleputers that at that time were little more than high-tech TV sets, though of course they had that little intelligent agent homuncular icon that would appear at the lower right of a broadcast cable program and tell you the time and temperature outside, or remind you to take your blood pressure medication, or alert you to a particularly compelling entertainment option now coming up on channel like 491 or something. Or, of course, now alerting you to an incoming video phone call, and then tap dancing with a little iconic straw boater and cane just under a menu of possible options for response. And callers did love their little homuncular icons. But why, within like 16 months or 5 sales quarters, the tumescent demand curve for videophony suddenly collapsed like a kicked tent, so that by the year of the Depend adult undergarment, fewer than 10% of all private telephone communications utilized any video image fiber data transfers or coincident products and services. The average US phone user deciding that she actually preferred the retrograde old low-tech Bell era voice-only telephonic interface after all. A preferential about face that cost a good many precipitant video telephony related entrepreneurs their shirts, plus destabilizing 2 highly respected mutual funds that had ground floored heavily in video phone technology, and very nearly wiping out the Maryland State Employees Retirement System's Freddie Mac Fund, a fund whose administrator's mistress's brother had been an almost maniacally precipitant video phone technology entrepreneur. But so why the abrupt consumer retreat back to good old voice-only telephoning? The answer, in a kind of trivalent nutshell, is number 1, emotional stress, number 2, physical vanity, and 3, a certain queer kind of self-obliterating logic in the microeconomics of consumer high-tech. Number 1, it turned out that there was something terribly stressful about visual telephone interfaces that hadn't been stressful at all about voice-only interfaces. Video phone consumers seemed suddenly to realize that they'd been subject to an insidious but wholly marvelous delusion about conventional voice-only telephony. They'd never noticed it before the delusion. It's like it was so emotionally complex that it could be countenanced only in the context of its loss. Good old traditional audio-only phone conversations allowed you to presume that the person on the other end was paying complete attention to you while also permitting you not to have to pay anything even close to complete attention to her. A traditional oral-only conversation utilizing a handheld phone whose earpiece contained only 6 little pinholes, but whose mouthpiece, rather significantly it later seemed, contained 62 or 36 little pinholes, let you enter a kind of highway hypnotic semi-attentive fugue. While conversing, You could look around the room, doodle, fine groom, peel tiny bits of dead skin away from cuticles, compose phone pad haiku, stir things on the stove. You could even carry on a whole separate additional sign language and exaggerated facial expression type of conversation with people right there in the room with you, all while seeming to be right there, attending closely to the voice on the phone. And yet, and this was the retrospectively marvelous part, even as you were dividing your attention between the phone call and all sorts of other idle-like, fugue-like activities, you were somehow never haunted by the suspicion that the person on the other end's attention might be similarly divided. During a traditional call, as you, let's say, performed a close tactile blemish scan on your chin, you were in no way oppressed by the thought that your phone mate was also devoting a good percentage of her attention to a close tactile blemish scan. It was an illusion, and the illusion was oral, and it was orally supported. The phone line's other end's voice was dense, tightly compressed, and vectored right into your ear, enabling you to imagine that the voice's owner's attention was similarly compressed and focused, even though your own attention was not. That was the thing. This bilateral illusion of unilateral attention was almost infantilely gratifying from an emotional standpoint. You got to believe you were receiving somebody's complete attention without having to return it. Regarded with the objectivity of hindsight, the illusion appears irrational, almost literally fantastic. It would be like being able both to lie and trust other people at the same time. Now, video telephony rendered this fantasy insupportable. Callers now found they had to compose the same sort of earnest, slightly over-intense listener's expression they had to compose for in-person exchanges. Those callers who out of unconscious habit succumbed to fugue-like doodling or pants crease adjustment now came off looking rude, absent-minded, or childishly self-absorbed. Callers who even more unconsciously blemish scanned or nostril explored looked up to find horrified expressions on the video faces at the other end, all of which resulted in videophonic stress. And even worse was the traumatic expulsion from Eden feeling of looking up from tracing your thumb's outline on the reminder pad or adjusting the old unit's angle of repose in your shorts and actually seeing your videophonic interfacee idly strip a shoelace of its gumlet as she talked to you and suddenly realizing your whole infantile fantasy of commanding your partner's attention while you yourself got to fugue doodle and make little genital adjustments was deluded and insupportable, and that you were actually commanding not one bit more attention than you were paying. The whole attention business was monstrously stressful, video callers found. Number 2. And the videophonic stress was even worse if you were all that vain, i.e., if you worried at all about how you looked, as into other people. Which, all kidding aside, who doesn't? Good old oral telephone calls could be fielded without makeup, toupee, surgical prosthesis, etc., even without clothes, if that sort of thing rattled your saber. But for the image conscious, there was, of course, no such answer as you are in formality about visual video telephone calls, which consumers began to see were less like having the good old phone ring than having the doorbell ring and having to throw on clothes and attach prosthesis and do hair checks in the foyer mirror before answering the door. But the real coffin nail for videophony involved the way callers' faces looked on their TP screen during calls. Not their callers' faces, but their own when they saw them on video. It was a 3-button affair, after all, to use the TP's cartridge card's video record option to record both pulses in a 2-way visual call and play the call back and see how your face had actually looked to the other person during the call. This sort of appearance check was no more resistible than a mirror, but the experience proved almost universally horrifying. People were horrified at how their own faces appeared on a TP screen. It wasn't just Anchorman's bloat, that well-known impression of extra weight that video inflicts on the face. It was worse. Even with high-end TPs, high-def viewer screens, consumers perceived something essentially blurred and moist-looking about their phone faces, a shiny pellet indefiniteness that struck them as not just unflattering but somehow evasive, furtive, untrustworthy, unlikable. In an early and ominous interlace focus group survey that was all but ignored in a storm of entrepreneurial sci-fi tech enthusiasm, almost 60% of respondents who received visual access to their own faces during videophonic calls specifically used the terms untrustworthy, unlikable, or hard to like in describing their own visage's appearance, with a phenomenally ominous 71% of senior citizen respondents specifically comparing their video faces to that of Richard Nixon during the Nixon-Kennedy debates. The proposed solution to what the telecommunications industry psychological consultants termed video physiognomic dysphoria, or VPD, was, of course, the advent of high-definition masking. And in fact, it was those entrepreneurs who gravitated toward the production of high-definition videophonic imaging and then outright masks who got in and out of the short-lived videophonic era with their shirts plus solid additional nets. Mask-wise, the initial option of high-definition photographic imaging, i.e. taking the most flattering elements of a variety of flattering multi-angle photos of a given phone consumer and, thanks to existing image configuration equipment already pioneered by the cosmetics and law enforcement industries, combining them into a wildly attractive high-depth, broadcastable composite of a face wearing an earnest, slightly over-intense expression of complete attention, was quickly supplanted by the more inexpensive and bite economical option of, using the exact same cosmetic and FBI software, actually casting the enhanced facial image in a form-fitting polybutylene resin mask, and consumers soon found that the high upfront cost of a permanent wearable mask was more than worth it, considering the stress and VPD reduction benefits. And the convenient Velcro straps for the back of the mask and collar's head cost peanuts. And for a couple fiscal quarters, phone and cable companies were able to rally VPD-afflicted consumers' confidence by working out a horizontally integrated deal where free composite and masking services came with a video phone hookup. The high-def masks, when not in use, simply hung on a small hook on the side of a TP's phone console, admittedly looking maybe a bit surreal and discomfiting when detached and hanging there, empty and wrinkled, and sometimes there were potentially awkward mistaken identity snafus involving multi-user family or company phones and the hurried selection and attachment of the wrong mask, taken from some long row of empty hanging masks, but all in all, the mask seemed initially like a viable industry response to the vanity, stress, and Nixonian facial image problem. 2, and maybe also 3. But now, combine the natural entrepreneurial instinct to satisfy all sufficiently high consumer demand on the one hand, with what appears to be an almost equally natural distortion in the way persons tend to see themselves, and it becomes possible to account historically for the speed with which the whole high-def videophonic mask thing spiraled totally out of control. Not only is it weirdly hard to evaluate what you yourself look like whether you're good-looking or not, try looking in the mirror and determining where you stand in the attractiveness hierarchy with anything like the objective ease you can determine whether just about anybody else you know is good-looking or not. But it turned out that consumers' instinctively skewed self-perception plus vanity-related stress meant that they began preferring and then outright demanding videophone masks that were really quite a lot better looking than they themselves were in person. High-def mask entrepreneurs, ready and willing to supply not just verisimilitude but aesthetic enhancement, stronger chins, smaller eye bags, airbrushed scars, and wrinkles soon pushed the original mimetic mask entrepreneurs right out of the market. In a gradually unsubtilizing progression, within a couple more sales quarters, most consumers were now using masks so undeniably better looking on video phones than their real faces were in person, transmitting to one another such horrendously skewed and enhanced masked images of themselves that enormous psychosocial stress began to result. Large numbers of phone users suddenly reluctant to leave home and interface personally with people who they feared were now habituated to seeing their far better looking masked selves on the phone and would, on seeing them in person, suffer. So went the caller's phobia, the same illusion shattering aesthetic disappointment that certain women who always wear makeup give people the first time they ever see them without makeup. The social anxiety surrounding the phenomenon, psych consultants termed optimistically misrepresentational masking, or OMM, intensified steadily as the tiny, crude first generation video phone cameras technology improved to where the aperture wasn't as narrow. And now, the higher end tiny cameras could countenance and transmit more or less full body images. Certain psychologically unscrupulous entrepreneurs began marketing full body polybutylene and urethane 2D cutouts, sort of like the headless muscle man and bathing beauty cutouts you could stand behind and position your chin on the cardboard neck stump, or for cheap photos at the beach. Only these full body video phone masks were vastly more high tech and convincing looking. Once you added variable 2D wardrobe, hair, and eye color options, various aesthetic enlargements and reductions, etc., costs started to press the envelope of mass market affordability, even though there was at the same time horrific social pressure to be able to afford the very best possible mass 2D body image to keep from feeling comparatively hideous looking on the phone. How long then could one expect it to have been before the relentless entrepreneurial drive toward an even better mousetrap, conceived of the so-called transmittable tableau, also known as TT, which in retrospect was probably the really sharp business end of the videophonic coffin nail. With TTs, facial and bodily masking could now be dispensed with altogether and replaced with the video transmitted image of what was essentially a heavily doctored still photograph, one of an incredibly fit and attractive and well turned out human being, someone who actually resembled you, the caller, only in such limited respects as like race and limb number. The photo's face focused attentively in the direction of the videophonic camera from amid the sumptuous but not ostentatious appointments of the sort of room that best reflected the image of yourself you wanted to transmit, etc. The tableaux were simply high-quality transmission-ready photographs scaled down to diorama-like proportions and fitted with a plastic holder over the videophone camera, not unlike a lens cap. Extremely good-looking but not terrifically successful entertainment celebrities, the same sort who in decades past would have swelled the cast list of infomercials, found themselves in demand as models for various high-end videophone tableaux. Because they involved simple transmission-ready photography instead of computer imaging and enhancement, the tableau could be mass-produced and commensurately priced, and for a brief time they helped ease the tension between the high cost of enhanced body masking and the monstrous aesthetic pressures videophony exerted on callers, not to mention also providing employment for set designers, photographers, airbrushers, and infomercial level celebrities hard pressed by the declining fortunes of broadcast television advertisement. 3. But there's some sort of revealing lesson here in the beyond short-term viability curve of advances in consumer technology. The career of videophony conforms neatly to this curve's classically annular shape. First, there's some sort of terrific sci-fi-like advance in consumer tech, like from oral to videophoning, which advance always, however, has certain unforeseen disadvantages for the consumer. And then, but the market niches created by those disadvantages, like people's stressfully vain repulsion at their own videophonic appearance, are ingeniously filled via sheer entrepreneurial verve. And yet the very advantages of these ingenious disadvantage compensations seem all too often to undercut the original high-tech advance, resulting in consumer recidivism and curve closure and massive shirt loss for precipitant investors. In the present case, the stress and vanity compensation's own evolution saw video callers rejecting first their own faces, and then even their own heavily masked and enhanced physical likenesses, and finally covering the video cameras altogether and transmitting attractively stylized static tableau. And behind these lens cap dioramas and transmitted tableaus, callers, of course, found that they were once again stresslessly invisible, unvainly, makeup and toupee-less and baggy-eyed behind their celebrity dioramas, once again free, since once again unseen, to doodle, blemish scan, manicure, crease check while on their screen, the attractive, intensely attentive face of the well-appointed celebrity on the other end's tableau reassured them that they were the objects of a concentrated attention they themselves didn't have to exert. And of course, these advantages were nothing other than the once lost and now appreciated advantages of good old Bell era blind oral only telephoning with its 6 and 62 pinholes. The only difference was that now these expensive, silly, unreal stylized tableaux were being transmitted between TPs on high-priced video fiber lines. How much time after this realization sank in and spread among consumers, mostly via phone, interestingly, would any micro-econometrist expect to need to pass before high-tech visual videophony was mostly abandoned, then a return to good old telephoning, not only dictated by common consumer sense, but actually after a while culturally approved as a kind of chic integrity, not latteritis, but a kind of retrograde transcendence of sci-fi-ish high-tech for its own sake, a transcendence of the vanity and the slavery to high-tech fashion that people view as so unattractive in one another. In other words, a return to oral-only telephony became, at the closed curve's end, a kind of status symbol of anti-vanity, such that only callers utterly lacking in self-awareness continued to use videophony and tableau, to say nothing of masks, and these tacky facsimile using people became ironic cultural symbols of tacky vain slavery to corporate PR and high-tech novelty, became the subsidized era's tacky equivalents of people with leisure suits, black velvet paintings, sweater vests for their poodles, electric zirconium jewelry, no-code lingua scrapers, and so on. Most communications consumers put their tableau dioramas at the back of a knick-knack shelf and covered their cameras with standard black lens caps, and now use their phone consoles, little mask hooks to hang these new little plasticine address and phone diaries specially made with a little receptacle at the top of the binding for convenient hanging from former mask hooks. And even then, of course, the bulk of US consumers remained verifiably reluctant to leave home and teleputer and to interface personally, though this phenomenon's endurance can't be attributed to the videophony fad per se. And anyway, the new panagoraphobia served to open huge new entrepreneurial markets for home shopping and delivery and didn't cause much industry concern. That was the excerpt number 2. Videophony. Something the author, David Foster Wallace, did not live to see COVID and and on-camera anxiety. I love this excerpt also because the language and this is obviously satire. The book is very earnest, but the satiric bent to it's just absolutely delightful. So do we have time for one more short one? There's a little toilet humor in here. I hope people are not offended. But it's also very funny. We got introduced to Hell in Condensa in the first excerpt as a little boy, where his father pretends to be a dentist just to converse with him. And now we're going to get introduced to the second main character in the book, Don Gately Jr. And this was actually originally published in 1992 as also kind of a teaser. Wallace wrote this novel starting in, I think, 1988, and then it came out in 1996. This should be about a 10-minute excerpt. Autumn, year of dairy products from the American heartland. Drug addicts driven to crime to finance their drug addiction are not often inclined toward violent crime. Now, violence requires all different kinds of energy, and most drug addicts like to expend their energy not on their professional crime, but on what their professional crime lets them afford. Drug addicts are often burglars, therefore. One reason why the home of someone whose home has been burglarized feels violated and unclean is that there have probably been drug addicts in there. Don Gately was a 27-year-old oral narcotics addict, favoring Demerol and Talvin, and a more or less professional burglar, and he was himself unclean and violated. But he was a gifted burglar when he burgled through the size of a young dinosaur. Though the size of a young dinosaur with a massive and almost perfectly square head, he used to amuse his friends when drunk by letting them open and close elevator doors on. He was at his professional zenith, smart, sneaky, quiet, quick, possessed of good taste and reliable transportation, with a kind of ferocious jolliness in his attitude towards his livelihood. As an active drug addict, Gately was distinguished by his ferocious and jolly elan. He kept his big square chin up and his smile wide, but he bowed neither toward nor away from any man. He took zero in the way of shit and was a cheery but implacable exponent of the don't get mad, get even school. Like, for instance, once, after he'd done a really unpleasant 3-month bit in Revere Holding on nothing more than a remorseless North Shore assistant district attorney's circumstantial suspicion, finally getting out after 92 days, when his public defender got the charges dismissed on a right to speedy brief, Gately and a trusted associate paid a semi-professional visit to the private home of this assistant DA, whose zeal and warrant had cost Gately a nasty impromptu detox on the floor of his little holding cell. Also a believer in the revenge is tastier chilled dictum, Gately had waited patiently until the Eye on People section of The Globe mentioned the ADA and his wife's presence at some celebrity charity sailing thing out in Marblehead. Gately and the associate went that night to the ADA's private home in the upscale Wonderland Valley section of Revere. They killed the power to the home with a straight shunt in the meter's inflow, then clipped just the ground wire on the home's pricey HBT alarm, so that the alarm sound after 10 or so minutes and create the impression that the perps had somehow bungled the alarm and been scared off in the middle of the act. Later that night, when Revere's and Marblehead's finest summoned them home, the ADA and his wife found themselves minus a coin collection and 2 antique shotguns and nothing more. Quite a few other valuables were stacked on the floor of the living room of the foyer, like the perps hadn't had time to get them out of the house. Everything else in the burglarized home looked undisturbed. The ADA was a jaded pro. He walked around, touching the brim of his hat, and reconstructed probable events. The perps looked like they bungled disabling the alarm all the way and had got scared off by the thing's siren when the alarm's pricey HBT alternate ground kicked in at 300 volts. The ADA soothed his wife's sense of violation and uncleanliness He calmly insisted on sleeping there in their home that very night, no hotel. It was like crucial to get right back to the emotional horse in cases like this, he insisted. And then the next day, the ADA worked out the insurance and reported the shotguns to a buddy at ATF, and his wife calmed down, and life went on. About a month later, an envelope arrived in the ADA's home's exquisite wrought iron mailbox. In the envelope were a standard American Dental Association glossy brochure on the importance of daily oral hygiene, available at like any dentist's office anywhere, and 2 high-pixel Polaroid snapshots, one of Big Don Gately and one of his associate, each in a Halloween mask, denoting a clown's great good professional cheer, each with his pants down and bent over, and each with the enhanced focus handle of one of the couple's toothbrushes protruding from his bottom. Don Gately had sense enough never to work the North Shore again after that. But he ended up in hideous trouble anyway, ADA-wise. It was either bad luck or kismet or so forth. It was because of a cold, plain old human rhinovirus. And not even Don Gately's cold is what made him finally stop and question his kismet. The thing started out looking like tit on a tray, burglary-wise. A beautiful neo-Georgian home in a wildly upscale part of Brookline was set nicely back from an unlit pseudo-rural road, had a chintzy Centrico alarm system that fed, idiotically enough, on a whole separate 330-volt AC 90 Hz cable with its own meter, didn't seem to be on anything like a regular PM patrol route, and had at its rear flimsily tasteful French doors surrounded by dense and thorn-free deciduous shrubbery and blocked off from the garage halogen floods by a private EWD issue upscale dumpster. It was in short a real cocktease of a home, burglary-wise, for a drug addict, and Don Gately straight shunted the alarms meter and, with an associate, broke and entered and crept around on huge cat feet. Except, unfortunately, the owner of the house turned out to be still home, even though both of his cars and the rest of his family were gone. The little guy was asleep, sick, in bed upstairs, in acetate pajamas with a hot water bottle on his chest, and half a glass of OJ and a bottle of NyQuil, and a foreign book, and copies of International Affairs and Interdependent Affairs, and a pair of thick specs, and an industrial-sized box of Kleenex on the bedside table, and an empty vaporizer barely humming at the foot of the bed. And the guy was, to say the least, nonplussed to wake up and see high-filter flashlights crisscrossing over the unlit bedroom walls and bureau antique chiffonier as Gately and Associates scanned for a wall safe, which surprisingly, like 90% of people with wall safes, conceal in their master bedroom behind some sort of land or seascape painting. People turned out so identical in certain rude domestic particulars, it made Gately feel strange sometimes, like he was in possession of certain overlarge private facts to which no man should be entitled. Gately had a way stickier conscience about the possession of some of these large particular facts than he did about making off with other people's personal merchandise. But then, all of a sudden, in mid-silent search for a safe, here's this upscale home owner turning out to be home with a nasty head cold while his family's out on a 2-car foliage tour in what's left of the Berkshires, writhing groggily and nyquilized around on the bed and making honking adenoidal sounds and asking what in bloody hell is the meaning of this, except he's saying it in Quebecois French, which means to these thuggish U.S. drug addicts in Halloween clown masks, exactly nothing. He's sitting up in bed, a little and older type homeowner with a football-shaped head and gray Van Dyke and eyes, and you can tell they are used to corrective lenses as he switches on the bright bedside lamp. Gately could easily have screwed out of there and never looked back. But here, indeed, in the lamplight, is a seascape over next to the chiffonier, and the associate has a quick peek and reports that the safe behind it is to laugh at. It can be opened with harsh language, almost. And oral narcotics addicts tend to operate on an extremely rigid physical schedule of need and satisfaction. And Gately is at this moment firmly in the need part of the schedule. And so, D.W. Gately disastrously decides to go ahead and allow a non-violent burglary to become, in effect, a robbery, which the operative legal difference involves either violence or the coercive threat of same. And Gately draws himself up to his full menacing height and shines his flashlight in the little homeowner's roomy eyes and addresses him the way menacing criminals speak in popular entertainment. These various apocopes and so on, and takes hold of the guy's ear and conducts him down to a kitchen chair and binds his arms and legs to the chair with electrical cords neatly clipped from refrigerator and can opener. An Amp Cafe brand automatic cafe maker binds him just short of gangreously tight because he's hoping the Berkshire foliage is prime and the guy's going to be soloing in this chair for a good stretch of time. And Gately starts looking through the kitchen drawers for the silverware, not the good silver for company silverware, that was in a calfskin case underneath some neatly folded old spare Christmas wrapping in a stunning hardwood with ivory inlay chest of drawers in the living room where over 90% of upscale people's good silver is always hidden and has already been promoted and is piled just off the foyer, but just a regular old everyday flatware silverware, because the vast bulk of homeowners keep their dish towels 2 drawers below their everyday silverware drawer. And God's made no better call for help stifling gag in the world than a good old oily smelling fake linen dish towel. And the bound guy in the cords on the chair suddenly snaps to the implications of what Gately's looking for and is struggling and saying, "Do not gag me. I have a terrible cold. My nose, she's a brick of the snot. I have not the power to breathe through the nose. For the love of God, please do not gag my mouth." And as a gesture of goodwill, the homeowner tells Gately, who's rummaging the combination of the bedroom's seascape safe, except in French numbers, which together with the honking adenoidal inflection the guy's grip gives his speech doesn't even sound like human speech to Gately. But also the guy tells Gately there are some antique British takeover Quebecois gold coins in a calfskin purse taped to the back of an undistinguished impressionist landscape in the living room. But everything the Canadian homeowner says means no more to poor old Gately, whistling a jolly tune and trying to look menacing in his clown mask, than the cries of, say, North Shore gulls or inland crackles. And sure enough, the towels are 2 drawers under the spoons, and here comes Gately across the kitchen looking like a sort of bozo from hell, and the Quebecer guy's mouth goes oval with horror, and into that mouth goes a balled up, faintly greasy smelling kitchen towel, and across the guy's cheeks and over the dome of protruding linen goes some fine quality fibrous strapping tape from the drawer under the decommissioned phone. Why does everybody keep the serious mailing supplies in the drawer nearest the kitchen phone? And Don Gately and associate finished their swift and with the best of intentions non-violent business of stripping the Brookline home as bare as a post-feral hamster meadow, and they relocked the front door and hit the unlit road in Gately's reliable and double muffled 4x4. And the bound, wheezing, acetate-clad Canadian, the right-hand man to probably the most infamous anti-Onan organizer of the Great Concavity. Little editorial note, this is part of the macro plot. Don't worry. The lieutenant and troubleshooting trusted advisor who selflessly volunteered to move with his family to the savagely American area of Metro Boston to act as a liaison between and general leash holder for the half-dozen or so malevolent and mutually antagonistic groups of Quebecer separatists and Albertan ultra-rightists united only in their fanatical conviction that the USA's imperialistic gift or return of the so-calledly reconfigured Great Convexity to its northern neighbor and Onan ally constituted an intolerable blow to Canadian sovereignty, honor, and hygiene. This homeowner, unquestionably a VIP, although admittedly rather a covert VIP, or probably more accurately a PIT, there's a footnote for that in French, this meek-looking Canadian terrorism coordinator, bound to his chair, thoroughly gagged, sitting there alone under cold fluorescent kitchen lights, the rhino-virally afflicted man, gagged with skill and quality materials. The guy, having worked so hard to partially clear one clotted nasal passage that he tore intercostal ligaments in his ribs, soon found even that pinprick of air blocked off by mucus, implacable lava-like flow once again. And so has to tear more ligaments, trying to breach the other nostril, and so on. And after an hour of struggle, and flames in his chest, and blood on his lips, and the white kitchen towel from trying frantically to tongue the towel out past the tape, which is quality tape, and after hopes skyrocketing when the doorbell rings, and then hopes blackly dashed when the person at the door, a young woman with a clipboard and chewing gum who's offering promotional coupons good for Happy Holidays discounts on membership for 6 months or more at a string of Boston non-UV tanning salons, shrugs in her parka and makes a mark on the clipboard and blithely retreats down the long driveway to the pseudo-rural road. An hour of this or more, finally the Quebecois VIP, after unspeakable agony, slow suffocation, mucoidal or no, being no day at the Montreal Tulip Fest, at the height of which agony, hearing his head's pulse as receding thunder and watching his vision's circle shrink as a red aperture around his sight rotates steadily in from the edges, at the height of which he could think only, despite the pain and panic, of what a truly dumb and silly way this was, after all this time, to die, a thought which the towel and tape denied expression via the rueful grin with which the best men meet their dumbest ends. This Guillaume Duplessis passed bluely from this life, and sat there in the kitchen chair 250 clicks due east of some really spectacular autumn foliage for almost 2 nights and days, his posture getting more and more military as rigor mortis set in, with his bare feet looking like purple loaves of bread from the lividity. And when Brookline's finest were finally summoned and got him unbound from the coldly lit chair, they had to carry him out as if he were still seated. So militarily comme il faut had his limbs and spine hardened. And poor old Don Gately, whose professional habit of killing power with straight shunts to a meter's inflow was pretty much a signature MO, and who had, of course, a special place in the heart of a remorseless Revere ADA, with judicial clout throughout Boston's 3 counties and beyond, and of course particularly remorseless ADA as of late, whose wife now needed Valium even just to floss, and was patiently awaiting his chance. The ADA was coldly biding his time, being a patient, get even and cold dish man like Don Gately himself, who was, through no will to energy-consuming violence on his part, in the sort of a hell of a deep shit mess that can turn a man's life right around. All right. That's it.
Outstanding. Good God, those are some of the longest sentences I've ever heard in my life.
Yes. Wallace was very fond of extremely long sentences, but I have to tell you, just real quick, that there is a weird the reputation of this book sometimes is, oh, it's very, very complicated. And I have to tell you, no, it's not. Because these sentences are very long, but there is a fluidity to them. There is a melody. And when you get into this groove, it is so cinematic. The this was one of the best American writers that we had. I mean, he passed away tragically, unfortunately, but the 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 cinematic way the that he describes action, interaction, and again, there is a hell of a plot that is so funny and beats any type of whatever thriller, crime novel, international spy, whatever. It is insane and it's very enjoyable. Yeah. So thank you for having me.
Those were great selections. Thank you for sharing them.
I
We
thought
talked about this.
the video phony is very, is obviously
Oh my
relatable
God.
to Second Lifers too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and anybody who went through the pandemic,
Yep.
and worked through it. Oh my God, that's too funny. Well, thank you, and thank you everybody for sharing this time with us. Thanks for everybody who joined us in support of Reach Out and Read. There's still a lot of Saturday left for some of us, so enjoy your Saturday, enjoy your weekend, and we'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you again, Drax, and take care, everybody. Be good to each other.
Bye everyone. I'm going to say also thank you for hope people enjoyed this on the stream, and yeah, pick up a good book. And I know there's a few people here that
we're all thrown into it one way or the other. We all try to steer it as straight as we can. Sometimes we collide with each other. Who is to blame and who's gonna fix the boat? Life, oh life, there's nothing to fear from your life. Let me know if I can be of any help. Life, you and I, let's try a fresh start today. What do you say? Let's close the door on the past. So we swim, and it is in so many ways just a little trick to keep our heads above water. But now I'm not afraid anymore. Life, oh life, there's nothing to fear from your life. Let me know if I can be of any help. Life, you and I, let's try a fresh start today. What do you say? Let's close the door on the past. Oh life, there's nothing to fear from your life. Let me know if I can be of any help. Life, you and I, let's try a fresh start today. What do you say?